Have you ever met someone and after you met them, you're like, they're pretty cool, but I still feel like I don't know them, or maybe I don't even trust them. Imagine if your interviewer thought that about you. If you were interviewing someone, would you hire that person if you didn't trust them or if you didn't really know them? I wouldn't. So today I want to talk about how you're going to overcome that weird, awkward feeling in an interview, because sometimes that weird, awkward feeling can actually be the reason why your interviewer might not trust you. And the important building block to any relationship is trust. So if you want to learn 3 ways today that you can build trust with your interviewer, stay tuned because we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel. This is Life Guide for the Young and Aimless. This is where you come for career guidance, life tips, and honestly, I just want you guys to learn from my mistakes. So what I learned early on in interviewing is it's all about trust. You want the interviewer and the hiring manager to learn from you, about you, and ultimately build trust with you. I remember when I started interviewing, I hated it. It was the worst. It was so awkward. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know what stories to tell. But I shortly realized that building trust is the #1 thing you have to do in an interview. So I'm going to talk about 3 ways you can build trust with the interviewer very early on if you just follow these 3 steps. There's actually a Harvard Psychologist that talks about why trust is more important than competency. But essentially, you can be the best at your job, but if someone doesn't trust you, they're probably not going to hire you. Actually, I know for a fact they won't hire you. I don't want to work with someone that I don't trust. So here's 3 steps that you guys can follow. Alright guys, so let's start with step number 1. Step number 1 is know what you're motivated by and why it motivates you. A lot of times people go into an interview and say, I want to be successful, I want to be a manager, I want to make a lot of money. That story's not compelling. You have to have a why behind your motivation. And the reason why is if you give that information to your interviewer, they're going to be able to relate. I want to make a lot of money or be successful because I want to start a family someday. I want to build a foundation for myself. That does sound cheesy when you say it out loud, but if you sell it well with your true, authentic passion behind it, that's when it will relate back to the manager, the person in front of you. Because honestly, they probably wanted the same thing at some point in their life. They just want to know a little bit about who you are. If you want to get hard technical skills that you haven't gotten yet, you want to talk about what that's going to get you in the long run. I want to get hard technical coding skills under my belt because I eventually want to be a manager or a CTO someday. So I know I have to learn how to code really well, then I have to learn how to do design and architecture, and that will lead to me becoming a manager or a CTO. If you just want to be an admin that supports high-level executives, then you can say, I like supporting high-level executives because I like to know that my impact is happening behind the scenes, but I'm still impacting bigger initiatives that are going to help the organization as a whole. If you give them the reason why you want something, they're more likely to gravitate towards you as a person. All right, so that's step number 1. I would go home, write down what motivates you and why you're motivated by it. Practice telling that motivational story to your friends and family so you can get confident when you're in an interview to talk to them about what motivates you. All right, so that's step number 1. All right, so step number 2 is you have to make sure to come prepared with personal anecdotes, personal and professional small stories that are going to relate back to you and who you are and represent what you're about. That might sound pretty elementary, but remember, a lot of times we try to come up with these stories in the moment and they just come out all weird. So if you go home and sit down and actually try to think about specific stories that represent who you are and what you're about, it's gonna make your life 10 times easier in the interview, I promise you. So what you should do is go home and think about stories that are kind of cool or just represent a time where you had to make a hard decision or a time where you were faced at the crossroads and how you decide to go in which direction, right? So which major you decided to pick. I really wanted to pick an English major because, you know, my mom would always read these books to me as I was growing up, and I really liked the literature that she would pick. So I decided to become an English major. You know, I really wanted to become a CS major because my dad was an engineer and he'd always come home talking about all the problems he solved. and it really resonated with me and I wanted to do the same. If you have a story, a personal story that relates back to your professional image, it always lands 10 times better than, yeah, I picked this major because it was cool. Boring. So you gotta go home and look up behavioral interview questions and start to prepare specific stories that are really good about your professional image, all right? Other things could come up like, tell me about a time you struggled with making the right choice. Tell me about a time where you saw somebody that was wrong and you corrected them. If you have a very specific story and you have those in your back pocket, you never know when it's gonna come up in an interview, but you wanna be able to talk about those stories very openly and very easy, and that way it relates back to your professional image, all right? So what I would do is look at your resume, pick the top 5 bullet points of your resume, and come up with a story for each bullet point. That's gonna help you on the professional side. The personal side, that's gonna take some digging of you just understanding your upbringing and who you are, and again, what motivates you. It might take some time, and you might have to actually sit down and think about it and really review some old pictures or something, but know who you are. It's gonna go way better in the interview, all right? So that was step number 2, all right? This is gonna be step number 3, which is probably the most important step that you have to make sure you do and you practice with your friends and family, all right? Treat the interview like a conversation. Every single time that I've interviewed with a candidate and I've met somebody who was really robotic, I'd ask them a question, they'd answer it, and then they'd sit there waiting for me to answer or ask the next question. I was just so bored, and frankly, I would probably check out most of the time. The trick is, interviewing is kind of like dating, and it's kind of like meeting a new best friend. You want to relate with that person, you want to share stories, you want to laugh about it, you want to learn with that person. So if you treat the interview like a conversation, listen intently, and ask questions along the way, not just at the end of the interview, it's gonna feel much more fluid, and the person across the table is gonna have an easier time relating with you. So what you wanna do is make sure that you ask questions along the entire interview, right? This is gonna help you create opportunities to relate with the interviewer. This is in the form of the interviewer walking you to your interview room and you just say, hey, how was your day? A lot of times the interviewer might reply with, oh man, the day's so busy, I've been running around all day like with my head cut off or something. That's your opportunity to relate with them and build trust with them by saying, oh, I know exactly what you mean. During finals week, I was running around between study sessions and it just got super hectic and I was all over the place, so I know exactly what you mean. In that small moment, you're creating an opportunity for you guys to have this relationship between a story that's similar, and even though they're different, they're similar, right? Imagine the time that you hung with a friend and you guys both were sharing some crazy story like, damn, I can't believe I sent that risky text. And then, oh, the risky text worked. And then your friend tells you the same story and then you guys start laughing about it. It's kind of like that. Okay, it's not exactly like that, but it's kind of like that. You have stories that you guys share with each other. In a professional setting, you have professional stories that you share with each other that show that you guys go through the same thing. And if you can do that more in the interview, the more that you're building trust along the way. So if you do that throughout an entire interview process, you could have had 6, 7, or 8 points where you've built trust with that person and they feel like they know you. They feel like they want to relate with you. They feel like they want to laugh with you. And that's the whole point of an interview. People want to work with people they like. So step number 3 is treat it like a conversation. Ask questions along the way. That can come in the form of asking your interviewer what are some of the challenges they're facing right now. So imagine if an interviewer was like, man, today's really busy. I don't know, I'm just like bogged down with all this administrative work. That's your opportunity to be like, oh dang, is there a lot of administrative work in this role? Yeah, unfortunately, it's a necessary evil of the job. Well, that's your opportunity to be like, ooh, I know exactly what you're talking about. In my current job, I have to do a lot of administrative work in that I have to file, I have to do data entry, and then I have to, complete contracts. I don't like it, but I know it's necessary and it makes sure that the job is done right. So I usually set time, like an hour aside each day just to do administrative work. In that small moment, you got a chance to talk about what you've done professionally, share a story, and tell the interviewer, you deal with the same type of shit. So that's the whole goal here. Build trust with your interviewer, and I promise if you do that and you follow these 3 ways to do that, they're gonna trust you. All right guys, so that was 3 ways to build trust in the interview. Remember, interviews aren't supposed to be just talking about your skills and what you're good at. You want the interview to walk away feeling like, I really know this person, I really like that person, shoot, I think I want to work with that person. If you can get the interview walking away thinking those things, I promise you're gonna stand out above most interviewees. So 3 ways to build trust. You wanna know what you're motivated by and why it motivates you. That's gonna help with your personal brand story. Number 2, you prepare personal and professional stories beforehand. You wanna have them in your back pocket so when the time arises and the opportunity is there, you can share a story that the interviewer can relate with. Number 3, you want to treat the interview like a conversation. You want to talk to the person like they're your friend or you just met them on the street. It's not supposed to be robotic. It's not supposed to be a question and answer format. It really is there for you to learn about them and for them to learn about you. So remember, 3 ways to build trust. If you build trust, I promise you will win the interview or at least stand out above most people. If you like this content, hit the like button. I'm gonna do more content like this. Every single Sunday, we're gonna release a video so you guys can learn how to just be better at life, be better in your career. And again, just learn from my mistakes. So hit subscribe. Also, hit the bell for notifications so you get notified and we can do this thing, all right? Life Guide for the Young and Aimless. Let's go. All right, guys, so that was 3 ways to build interview trust.
Fuck, these movies are so good.
Yeah. Have you ever met someone and after met them? Oh.